Eric from McCluskey Arms Company. We're going to do a complete reassembly of the 1911 Series 70. This is the Commander 1911 with a bull barrel. Hey guys, today we're going to put back together a 1911 Series 70. Let's get started. We're going to put the mainspring housing back together. So you'll grab your mainspring housing and mainspring. You put your plunger and your detent into your mainspring like that. Set it detent first into mainspring housing. Now the easiest way to do this is to line up a pin, put your finger on it, and then press the mainspring down into the mainspring housing and push the pin in like that. All right, next thing we're gonna do is put the trigger into the frame and slide the trigger in from the back. The trigger stirrup can only go in, the trigger and the trigger stirrup can only go in one direction, so if it doesn't slide right in, flip it over top for bottom. Now we're going to put the magazine catch assembly back together. So magazine catch spring, and magazine catch retaining pin, let's call it. We're going to slide that back in there. Take just a screwdriver, push it in, turn it counterclockwise about a quarter turn, that'll lock it in. We'll toss that back in the frame, put it back in the frame. I let it sink too far down, start to put tension on that screw, and just push up until it locks in, then turn it the rest of the way. Now, this one, someone didn't like how stiff that was, so they cut that spring off. And the problem with that is, every time I push it, it's twisting off. So we're gonna fix that. I'm gonna go on the belt grinder and just flatten this end. Right back. All right, so all I did was I took the belt grinder and just flattened off both ends. That's gonna keep it from wanting to twist. And now it fixed it. All right, now we get to move on. How fun was that? Next thing we're gonna put in is the disconnector, right there, and the sear. Now these are gonna go together like this, and go in the gun. And when they go in the gun, they're gonna drop down into that hole right there, and they're gonna rest on the trigger. Easiest way to do that is to get it lined up into the hole and drop it down onto the trigger and scoot it forward like that. Now you can grab a little punch. So I'm just trying to make a pinhole, get it lined up, lay it horizontal and pull this out. And since it's not under spring tension, it'll just stay there. And then you can slide your pin down in like that. Now your sear and your disconnector in. And put your hammer in. That, just set it in about that orientation. Drop your hammer pin down like that. Now you're gonna take it and flip the hammer strut forward. That is your sear, disconnector, and grip safety spring all together. When they're flat like this, normally they have a pretty good bow to them. When they're flat like this, that means someone at home thought they were gonna make the trigger lighter by just taking the spring pressure off. It's a good way to get a gun that doesn't function at all. So if your gun isn't resetting, check this. It's not supposed to be straight like that. So you're gonna set it it has a cut in the bottom of the frame there, and that's where that notch is gonna go. And you just set it onto the sear and the disconnector on top. So it'll be just like that. And then I put the mainspring housing in just about 2/3 the way, just to hold that spring in place. Flip the hammer strut down. Set the grip safety in. The grip safety spring and the grip safety have to mesh together like that. Set that into place. And you can set your safety on partially, something like that. Grab your detents and slide them into there. And if you have a hard time going in, that's good. That's what's keeping the spring from flying out for the next guy. Right, now it doesn't want to spring out. And we're gonna set it in. I have to cock the hammer, which is gonna push your mainspring housing down, that's fine. Cock the hammer and you gotta push the detent forward while spinning that down like that. Make sure you got a good detent action. Now, release the hammer again by pulling the trigger. Oh. Okay, now we're gonna make sure that the hammer strut is in the mainspring housing hole. So if it's behind it, like that, it's not gonna wanna go in. So just tilt the gun upside down, let gravity do your work for you. And then I just push down on the table. So push straight down to get that mainspring housing in place, and put your mainspring housing pin, retaining pin in. Once it's halfway in, you can just tap it in like that. And we have the other side of the ambidextrous safety. So this is really straightforward. You just get it into the right spot, click it into place. Way harder to take off than it is to put on. Now we'll put your slide together. So the first thing we're gonna do is put the extractor in. Extractor is under spring tension, kind of sideways, so it'll take a little bit of force, and just put it in until it lines up with this groove here. That's important for assembly later. Now, put your firing pin spring back on your firing pin. There's going to be a closed section of your firing pin spring where it's like one coil is tighter. That's going to go on like this so that it holds the spring onto the firing pin. And slide it in the firing pin slot until it is about there, and then you can set your rear plate on and it'll hold the firing pin in place, so you can readjust and push the firing pin into the frame or into the slide and push it up, and then the firing pin should pop out like that. Slide your barrel in from the front. Put your link in the back position. Mainspring goes closed side, so there's always going to be a closed side and a completely open side. Closed side to the rear of the gun, like that. There's a notch in your guide rod that's going to go towards the barrel. And this one, you're going to grab your bushing, put it notch towards the barrel, like that. And push this in, set it in place. Hold on to it so it doesn't spring out. And put your link in about that position. Slide the slide onto the frame. And on this one, you can pull back to there, so you'll see the barrel right there. Right there, you'll see the bottom of the barrel. You want to pull it until that disappears, like that. And then the link is free of that hole. So basically it's a straight drive for just your slide, your takedown pin to go right in. Now you're gonna push down and into that hole. This is where someone has rotated. It's called a dummy mark. It's gonna scratch the side of your frame. So you wanna set it right there, push down and into that groove. So don't scratch the side of your frame. Now you can let go of that. Now we're gonna put the front of the guide rod on, slide it in, and use your Allen key to thread that back on. You wanna make sure this is pretty tight. You don't want it to work its way off during firing. Put our grips back on. If, like this one, the threaded bushing comes off on the grip, put that one in first, not a grip screw, because you'll flex the grips and sometimes they crack. Put the magazine back together. This one, the spring is a little different on the front versus, or on the top versus the bottom. Just take note of that. All the magazines are going to be different. Spring back in. Put your retainer plate back in, and you can put your base pad back on, and you're going to need to hold it down. Push it over. Okay. That should be a fully reassembled 1911 Series 70. This is Eric from the McCluskey Arms Company. Thank you for watching. I don't want to be on the camera anymore.